A Vampire's Love, written by Eileen Sheehan, narrated by Steve Clemmo. 1. It didn't take much deliberation for Janice to settle on the theme of the dissertation for her mythological studies. She had grown up being the oddball in a household filled with superstition and fear. Not only did she not believe in the stories they told of wild beasts who wandered the night, but she had no fear of the dark. None. She finally had a valid excuse to prove to everyone how foolish they were. Her only obstacle was deciding on what beast of the night to focus on. Werewolf, vampire, ghosts, zombies, Loch Ness. The list was endless. She and Cassidy were friends since grade school. Cassidy got along much better than Janice did with her family, since her fear exceeded theirs when it came to things going bump in the night. Whether they bonded because opposites attract, or if it was because Cassidy so closely resembled Janice's siblings in habits and attitude, she couldn't say. Whatever the reason, they became best friends the moment they set eyes on each other that first day of kindergarten 20 years ago. The crisp scent of autumn tickled her senses on that fateful morning that would alter her life forever. She was late, as usual, for theology class. Cassidy spotted her racing across the campus and rushed to keep step. Since she was 5 feet 2 inches and Janice was 5 feet 8 inches, that was no easy feat. "Did you decide on an angle for your dissertation?" Cassidy asked, while struggling to keep her breathing steady. "You seem pretty eager to prove me all wrong," Janice chuckled. "Did it ever occur to you that this dissertation might just prove us right?" Cassidy asked. "Nope," Janice snickered. "You are in for such a rude awakening," Cassidy smirked. "This is going to be good." They were just about to where they would have to part company and go their separate ways when she added, "I've signed us up for ghost hunting on Halloween." Janice stopped short and looked at her with surprise. It wasn't that she was upset about being signed up without being asked first. They were forever signing each other up for events they thought would be enjoyable. It was the fact that her superstitious best friend was willing to join her for it. There had to be a catch. "What's the catch?" "Why do you always think I have an ulterior motive for things?" Cassidy said defensively. "Can't you just accept the fact that I'm helping you? I'm just surprised you signed yourself up as well. You know how creeped out you get on Halloween," she said apologetically. "You also know how much I love historic homes. We'll be staying in an old mansion. You know the one at the end of Muldrake Lane that everyone says is haunted? The owner is in town, and it's occupied again. We're meeting at the coffee house at 4 o'clock, Cassidy said over her shoulder as she hurried on her way. Janice watched her friend's long blonde curls sway behind her with every step that she took. She'd always loved Cassidy's hair. The shining locks reflected the light in a way that just spoke of sunshine and happiness. Then, as far as Janice was concerned, all of Cassidy spoke of sunshine and happiness. She had to be one of the most positive people on the planet. Her mind was so filled with excitement and curiosity about this Halloween excursion that she could barely concentrate on classes the rest of the day. She was excited on several accounts. According to mythology, the veil between the human world and the world of the supernatural, or, as some call it, the invisible world, was so thin that a person could easily see and move between them. The fact that they would be staying in a historic mansion just sweetened the situation. Janice shared Cassidy's love of history and antiques. Being able to spend the night in the mansion was worth associating with a group of crazies who chased after imaginary things that went bump in the night, with equipment that was rigged by the manufacturers to produce the desired results to convince the poor suckers who bought them that they were effective. She didn't believe in psychics, but she did believe that people's levels of sensory perception could vary. For example, her ability to feel the energy, or, so she liked to call it, mood, of a room, or of the last person who sat in a chair far exceeded Cassidy's ability. She couldn't help getting excited about walking through age-old rooms and sitting on furniture that held the energy of days gone by. Janice was one of the last to arrive at the coffee house near the campus. The small lounge was packed with people drinking their specialty beverages while mingling, either standing or sitting. She was certain that the maximum capacity of people in the room that was set by the fire marshal was exceeded. Yet, she doubted management would do anything about it. Little Meadows was a college town that often operated by its own rules. Seeing how crowded it was, Janice didn't need to ask where the paranormal group was meeting. She elbowed her way politely as she could through the crowd until she reached the door that took her down a short hall to the coffeehouse meeting room. The small hall felt airy and refreshing after the sea of sweat and coffee breath she had just braved. She replenished her lungs several times before reaching the door to the meeting room. It was left ajar, so she carefully pushed it open and quietly entered. Confusion struck as she looked at the backs of about a dozen people seated in neat rows, listening attentively to the speaker in the front of the room enthusiastically tell them about a ghostly encounter he had recently experienced. She could have sworn Cassidy said to be there at 4 o'clock. She checked her watch. It was 4:05. This was a group that believed in sticking to schedules. Cassidy waved and pointed towards the empty seat next to her. Janice nodded and quietly inched away past people leaning against the wall at the back of the small room. She was just about to the end of the row of statue-like bodies when her boot-clad foot tripped over the wayward strap of a computer case. She fell against a tall man with an unforgiving, rock-hard chest. Strong arms caught and cradled her, like one would do with a child who'd fallen off balance. His powerful arms supported her effortlessly as she found her footing. Not wanting to create a disturbance, she looked up with the intention of whispering her apologies while she struggled to regain her balance as inconspicuously as possible. To her humiliation, the minute her eyes met his rich brown eyes that were set perfectly below sleek, well-shaped brows, her mind became a bowl of mush. She was sure he saw into the depths of her soul with those twinkling, mesmerizing orbs. To add to her humiliation, an odd sensation rushed through her. It felt as if she was opening or clearing her energies for the first time. When she could do nothing more than produce a deep guttural sound, his thin, shapely lips formed a teasing smile. Her face reddened when she regained enough of her senses to avert his eyes. She pushed free from him as quietly as possible, before rushing to the seat next to Cassidy. Cassidy looked at her with raised brows, but said nothing as her attention turned back to the speaker. After an excruciating 45 minutes of more ridiculous tales from the dark side from various speakers, they were finally able to mix and mingle. This meant that Janice could get the full scope of the arrangements Cassidy had made for the Halloween excursion. "Was it too terrible for you?" Cassidy asked sympathetically, as she handed Janice a latte she had somehow managed to get in record time. "I'll survive," Janice replied as she pulled the plastic lid from the paper cup and savored the aroma of the piping hot beverage. "I love the smell of coffee." "It relaxes you," Cassidy giggled. "You do realize how weird that is, don't you?" "She says, as we stand in a room filled with people giving Yeti testimonies," Janice mumbled. "Touché," said a rich voice. Cassidy's eyes grew wide with admiration as she looked past Janice at the owner of the rich, sexy voice. Her blue eyes sparkled, and a broad smile appeared as she said, "I guess I had that coming." Janice closed her eyes and winced. She didn't know why, but something in her gut told her that the man with the great voice standing behind her was the very same man with the gorgeous eyes and rock-hard chest that she'd stumbled into upon arrival. Still mortified by the guttural noise that had emanated from her throat, she couldn't bring herself to look at him. Clearly taken aback by her friend's behavior, Cassidy took the etiquette lead and extended her hand. "I'm Cassidy Jones, and this is my very rude friend, Janice McGuire." "I had the pleasure of bumping into Janice at the onset of the meeting," he said with amusement. Janice detected a hint of an accent. It was so slight she couldn't place it. British? Perhaps. "I'm Anton Williams." His broad smile displayed beautiful, pearly white, perfectly straight teeth. "Will you be attending the Halloween investigation at the mansion?" "Oh, yes," Cassidy said with childlike enthusiasm. "I can hardly wait." "What about you, Janice? You looked fairly bored during the testimonies," he said. Janice's face felt burning hot and her throat was so constricted that she was surprised when she managed to choke out, "I'll be there." "You don't believe, do you?" he said with a raised brow. "Let's just say that I'll believe it when I see it," Janice replied with a smirk. "What about you?" Cassidy asked eagerly. "Will you be going?" "As a matter of fact, I'm the host," he said warmly. It's my family estate you'll be investigating. They say your place is haunted, Cassidy gasped unthinkingly. My friend is a believer, but also a scaredy cat, Janice mumbled into her coffee cup. I admit, I get a little goosey when a spirit is around, Cassidy grumbled before redirecting her attention to Anton. Have you seen any ghosts? None that would chase me out of my home, he laughed. So I guess that means you do believe? Janice said with a raised brow. The handsome man before her spoke and looked like an intelligent man. To find out he was a squirrely Yeti chaser would be a major disappointment for Janice. She held her breath while waiting for his reply. Let's just say that I believe what I've seen, he chuckled. I've seen pictures of your place, Cassidy said, ignoring their bantering. It looks spectacular. Why, thank you, he cooed. I'm rather fond of it. How long has it been in your family? Janice asked with renewed interest. The original part of the mansion was built in 1792, he said wistfully. There have been add-ons since then. The last add-on was in 1910. So even the newest part is over 100 years old, Janice mused. I can only imagine what the walls have to say. And the furnishings, he added. There is very little in my home that is less than 70 years old. Most of it is much older, but well preserved. How remarkable, Janice gasped with genuine enthusiasm. I can hardly wait to see and experience it. Janice gets strong feelings from places, Cassidy offered proudly. I see, Anton mused. Then I'll take extra care in assigning your rooms to you. We'll be getting an actual room? Cassidy said excitedly. Why not? Anton asked. I thought we'd just be investigating the house and then leaving, she replied. What if I wanted to extend my hospitality? Would you accept? He asked graciously. Spend a night in such a historic place? Oh yes, Cassidy cooed. How many rooms do you have? Janice asked with a warm smile. Bedrooms or rooms in general? He asked. Both, she shrugged. I have 15 guest bedrooms, 5 servants' rooms that have an adjacent sitting room and kitchen, which are occupied by staff. And let's see, if I'm not mistaken, the mansion has a total of 40 rooms, he said thoughtfully. You aren't certain? She asked in surprise. I knew at one time, but there have been a few revisions and a bit of updating in some of the newer sections, he explained. Such as? Cassidy asked, while clinging to his every word. A theater room, an indoor pool, and a bowling alley were added for starters, he said. Janice winced as he told of the renovations that were done to the historic home. Her worry about how they affected the ambiance must have been apparent, because he hurried to assure them that the remodeling was done in the back of the house and did nothing to detract from the stateliness of the mansion's exterior profile. Nor was it apparent on the inside. He claimed that the rooms blended so well with the decor of the mansion that a person would literally have to be directed to the rooms in order to find them. Janice's curiosity was piqued. 2. This wasn't the first paranormal investigation Anton had hosted at his mansion, but it was the first one he had ever done on All Hallows' Eve. He hadn't put much thought into the perils awaiting humans on Halloween until the beautiful, willowy brunette literally fell into his arms. Her hazel eyes connected with his brown ones in a way that made time stand still and the world around him disappear. For the briefest moment, his fingers entwined in her long silken hair. It felt luxurious. It took all of his power of will to restrain from embracing her and kissing those full, ruby lips as currents of tantalizing, near-electric desire raced through him. It was love at first sight. He could sense a vulnerability hidden behind a facade of strength as he steadied her on her feet. It was clear she didn't belong to the group. She was different from the rest. He just didn't know what that difference was. He couldn't take his eyes off her during that long, drawn-out hour that followed before he was able to approach her and speak to her. Nor could he keep from smirking at her obvious boredom during the testimonies. He had to agree with her. He found the group's overly zealous tales tedious at best, but clearly for a different reason. Her boredom was because she was a non-believer. His was due to the blatant, childlike ignorance of the storytellers. If only he was free to share the truth about the world they chased after. He wondered then if they'd be so eager to prove its existence, let alone enter it. The fools deliberately requested the weekend investigation to be held on All Hallows' Eve, so that they could attempt to do just that. Much of the rumors circulated amongst paranormal investigators, as well as society in general, were fact or based on fact, like the one that stated the veil between the human world and the other worlds was thin enough to cross through during All Hallows' Eve. What they were mistaken about was that although humans required the veil to be thin to see or enter the other worlds were very much aware of theirs at all times and could come and go at will. It was more difficult to maneuver between worlds when the veil was thicker, but not impossible. As he watched the beautiful brunette who was introduced to him by the lovely blonde as Janice slowly grew more comfortable and animated with him, he began to regret agreeing to the Halloween investigation. It had been a long time since he had reacted to a woman in the way he'd reacted to this one. There was something very special about her that he didn't want to lose. He should talk her out of attending the investigation, but his selfish need to have her near wouldn't let him. He stayed near her during the 1-hour mingling that took place after the testimonies and participated in much of the conversation. The group was eager with questions about the mansion. He was careful to answer them politely, but often vaguely, while never taking his attention off Janice. Even though he tried to be discreet about monitoring her, it was clear that Janice was aware of it. Rather than be flattered by his attention, she showed signs of discomfort. Worried that he'd lose her before ever getting her, he decided to back off. But not before taking a chance and asking for her number. To his surprise and pleasure, she gave it to him.